The snow had been falling for 3 hours when I found her. 3 hours of winter's cruelest work, transforming the palace gardens into a killing field of ice and silence. The rose bushes stood like skeletal sentinels, their thorns glistening with frost, their beauty long since surrendered to the season's merciless grip. Somewhere in the distance, beyond the stone walls of the palace, I could hear the faint echo of celebration. The winter solstice feast was in full swing. Music and laughter spilled from the great hall's windows, warm light painting gold across the snow. I was not there. I had not attended a feast in 9 years. My boots crunched through the frozen garden path, each step deliberate, measured. The cold meant nothing to me anymore. I had learned to feel nothing at all. It was safer that way. For everyone. The wolf that lived inside every alpha king had been twisted by my uncle's betrayal into something darker, something that killed without mercy when emotions ran too strong. The patrol was routine. Every evening at this hour, I walked the grounds alone. No guards, no attendants, just me and the weight of a crown I had never wanted, moving through shadows like a ghost in my own kingdom. The servants knew to avoid me during these hours. The nobles had learned not to ask where their king disappeared to after sunset. And the few who remembered the man I had been before, they had long since stopped looking for him in my eyes. That was when I saw her. A shape in the snow, too still, too small, collapsed beside the winter roses like a fallen petal, pale against the white. My heart, that muscle I had spent 9 years teaching not to feel, lurched in my chest. The wolf stirred, recognizing something it could not name. Pack, mine. Important. I ran. The distance between us closed in seconds, my alpha speed carrying me across the frozen ground faster than any human could move. I dropped to my knees beside her, snow soaking through my trousers, and my hands moved of their own accord, reaching, touching, breaking the one rule I had sworn never to break. Never touch, never feel, never let the monster out. Her skin was ice beneath my fingers, blue lips, frost clinging to pale blonde hair that had escaped from beneath her servant's cap. Her eyes were closed, lashes dusted with snowflakes. She looked like something from a fairy tale, the kind that ended badly. I had seen death before, caused it even, in ways that still haunted my dreams. 9 years ago, on the day I took the crown after my father fell in battle, my uncle Marcus had worked with a sorcerer to curse me. Had watched with cold calculation as the curse took root, knowing it would make me unfit to rule. Marcus, who should have stood beside me as regent and advisor, had instead chosen ambition over blood, had allied with dark powers and fled when his treachery was discovered. The curse was his parting gift, a way to destroy me slowly, publicly, by making me into the very monster he had always claimed lurked inside our bloodline. But this girl, this moment, felt different, wrong, like watching a light go out in a world that had already grown too dark. Without thinking, I gathered her into my arms. She weighed almost nothing, a wisp of a girl, all fragile bones and frozen skin. I pulled her against my chest, and that was when it happened. Warmth, not the warmth of body heat returning to someone on the edge of hypothermia. Something else, something that bloomed in the center of my chest, like a flower breaking through winter soil, a sensation I had not felt in 9 years of carefully controlled emptiness. The wolf inside me, that primal part of my nature that understood things my human logic could not, went absolutely still, quiet, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Hope, and with it came the fear. Because hope meant feeling, and feeling meant the curse would wake, and when the curse woke, people died. I waited for it. The familiar burn in my veins, the way my vision would tint red at the edges, the sensation of my humanity slipping away like water through clenched fists, leaving only the beast behind. The wolf that lived inside every alpha, but in me had become something twisted by Marcus's dark magic, something that killed without mercy or restraint. It did not come. The warmth remained, the hope stayed, and the girl in my arms took a shallow, shuddering breath. She was alive. I looked down at her face, this stranger who had somehow survived what should have killed her, and for the first time in 9 years, I felt something beyond emptiness. I felt wonder, and beneath it, threading through my chest like golden wire, I felt the first stirrings of something that might have been called caring. "She's different," my wolf's voice whispered in the back of my mind. "She's yours. Protect. Keep safe." Which meant she was dangerous. I should have left her there, should have called for the servants, let them handle it, walked away before this warmth in my chest could grow into something I could not control. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing, the thing a king who could not afford to feel anything would do. Instead, I stood, lifting her as though she weighed nothing, and carried her toward the palace. Her head lolled against my shoulder. Through the thin fabric of her servant's dress, I could feel her heartbeat. Weak, irregular, but present. I adjusted my grip, pulling her closer, and the warmth in my chest intensified. The wolf purred, content in a way it had not been since the day my father died, and the curse took root. "What are you doing?" The rational part of my mind screamed at me. "You know what happens when you feel. You know what you become." But the wolf was quiet, calm, as if this girl's presence had somehow tamed the beast that Marcus's curse had created. The servant's entrance loomed ahead. I kicked the door open, snow swirling in behind me, and the heat of the palace hit like a wall. A maid shrieked at the sight of me. They always did when I appeared unexpectedly. The cursed king, carrying a frozen body. It must have looked like a scene from a nightmare. "Get the physician," I said. My voice came out rougher than I intended, edged with the growl that marked my alpha nature. "Now." The maid fled. Footsteps thundered through the corridors as word spread. I did not wait. I carried the girl through the servants' halls, past shocked faces and whispered prayers, until I reached the east wing. The guest quarters, far from the servants' cramped rooms, far from the cold stone of the lower levels. I kicked open the door to the finest chamber, the one kept ready for visiting dignitaries who never came, the one with the massive fireplace and the bed piled high with quilts. I laid her down as gently as I could, pulled the blankets up to her chin, and stepped back. Only then did I realize my hands were shaking. Footsteps in the hallway. The royal physician burst through the door, already reaching for his bag. Behind him came Captain Aldrich Stone, my father's old friend and the only man in the kingdom who still dared to question my orders. At 45, Aldrich was still sharp as the sword he carried, his weathered face showing every battle he had survived. He had been there the day Marcus fled, had helped me through the first terrible transformation when the curse took hold. "Your Majesty," Aldrich said, his voice steady despite the concern in his eyes. "What happened?" "I found her in the garden. I could not take my eyes off her face. She was dying." The physician was already working, checking her pulse, her breathing, lifting her eyelids to examine her pupils. His movements were swift, efficient, professional. I should have left, should have trusted him to do his job, but my feet would not move. The wolf refused to leave its charge, its responsibility, its mate? The thought was absurd, impossible. Alpha kings did not bond with random servants they found in the snow. Bonds required time, compatibility, the intricate dance of wolf recognizing wolf. This girl was probably not even a shifter, just a human caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. But my wolf disagreed. It knew what it knew. "How long was she out there?" the physician asked. "I don't know. The admission felt like failure, hours maybe." The physician's jaw tightened. He pulled back the blanket, began removing her wet clothes with practiced efficiency. I turned away, giving her privacy, but I did not leave the room. Could not leave the room. Aldrich moved to my side. His voice dropped to a whisper, meant only for my ears, for an alpha's enhanced hearing. "You carried her yourself." It was not a question. "Yes." "Through the palace, where anyone could see." "Yes." "Do you know what the court will say? What they'll think?" "I don't care what they think." The words surprised me with their vehemence. I had spent 9 years caring about nothing but what the court thought, about maintaining the careful facade of control that kept them from seeing the monster underneath. Aldrich studied my face with the shrewdness that came from decades of military service. He had been my father's captain of the guard, had fought beside him in the wars that nearly destroyed our kingdom, had been there the day Marcus betrayed us all, when my uncle had chosen power over loyalty and allied with the sorcerer Malachar. Aldrich knew me better than anyone alive. "You felt something," he said quietly, "didn't you?" I said nothing, but my silence was answer enough. "The curse?" I shook my head. It didn't come. The wolf was calm. Aldrich's expression shifted from concern to something that looked almost like fear. "That's not possible, not since Marcus laid that curse on you. 9 years, Theron. 9 years of the beast surfacing every time you felt strongly. And now suddenly with this girl, nothing? I know. The physician cleared his throat. Your Majesty, she's stable. Hypothermia, severe, but I believe she'll survive. Her body temperature is rising. Heart rate is improving. He paused, studying the unconscious girl with professional interest. She's stronger than she looks. Resilient. Who is she? I asked. The physician consulted a small notebook he kept in his coat. Elara Moonshade, Your Majesty. 23 years old. Been in service here for 5 years, working in the scullery and gardens. He flipped a page. Mother deceased 7 years ago. Father unknown. No family to speak of. Moonshade. The name stirred something in my memory. An old story my father had told me once about a family of healers who had served the crown generations ago. Healers with gifts that bordered on magic, but they had died out, hadn't they? The last Moonshade had perished during my mother's difficult childbirth, sacrificing her own life to save the queen and the baby she carried. Me. Could this girl be descended from that bloodline? Was that why the wolf recognized her as important? I want her moved to this room permanently, I said, not the servants' quarters. Here. Your Majesty, the physician began, that's highly irregular. I don't care if it's irregular. I turned to face him fully, and whatever he saw in my expression, the gold bleeding into my eyes as the alpha in me asserted dominance, made him step back. She nearly died because someone sent her out into a blizzard to trim roses. That ends now. She stays here until she's recovered. Am I understood? Of course, Your Majesty. And find out who gave her that assignment. I want a name. The physician bowed and retreated quickly. Only Aldrich remained, watching me with that unsettling mixture of concern and calculation that made him such a valuable advisor. You should be careful, he said when we were alone. The court is already restless. They've been pressing you to take a queen to secure the succession. If they think you're showing favoritism to a servant girl, especially one you just met, let them think what they want. I moved to the fireplace, stared into the flames. I've given them 9 years of exactly what they wanted. A king who feels nothing, who rules with cold logic, who never lets his wolf nature influence his decisions. Maybe it's time they saw something different. And if the curse comes back, if this is just, I don't know, an anomaly? What happens when you feel anger again, or grief, and the beast emerges? The question hung in the air between us like smoke. We both knew what that meant. 9 years ago, on the day I took the crown, I had learned the price of feeling, had felt rage at Marcus's betrayal, and the wolf inside me had erupted with a violence I could not control. 3 men had died before Aldrich and the guards managed to chain me. 3 innocent soldiers, torn apart by their own king. I had sworn that day never to feel strongly again. No anger, no joy, no love. Nothing that could wake the beast and hurt the people I was supposed to protect, until tonight. I don't know, I admitted, but Aldrich, when I touched her, I felt, really felt. And the curse stayed quiet. The wolf was content. What if that means something? What if she's the key to breaking what Marcus did to me? Or what if she's the thing that finally makes you lose control completely? What if you're about to get that girl killed? The words hit like a fist, because he was right. Everything I touched turned to death and ash. My father, my kingdom's peace, my own humanity. What made me think this girl, this Elara Moonshade, would be any different? I'll keep my distance, I said finally. But I won't send her back to that life. She deserves better than freezing in gardens while nobles feast. We all deserve better than what we get, Aldrich said. But kings don't have the luxury of sentiment. You taught me that. I had taught him that. Had spent 9 years living by that principle, trying to be the ruler Marcus's curse demanded I become. Cold, distant, unfeeling. But looking at the girl in the bed, her chest rising and falling with breath that had almost stopped forever, I wondered if I had been wrong all along. Get some rest, I told Aldrich. We'll talk in the morning, and send word to the border patrols. I want increased vigilance. If Marcus's sorcerer is still out there, if they're planning something, I need to know. Aldrich hesitated at the door. For what it's worth, he said, I'm glad you saved her. It's the most human thing you've done in years, the most like the young prince I remember, before the curse took the light from your eyes. Then he was gone, and I was alone with the sleeping girl and the sound of the fire crackling in the hearth. I should have left, should have returned to my own chambers, my own cold bed, my own carefully maintained isolation. But I found myself pulling a chair close to her bedside and sitting down. Just for a moment, I told myself, just to make sure she's all right. The firelight played across her face, casting shadows that softened her features. She looked younger than 23, vulnerable, nothing like the hardened servants who had learned to navigate the palace's cruel hierarchies. There was something pure about her, unmarked by the cynicism that infected everyone else in this place. "Who are you?" I whispered to her sleeping form. "And why does my wolf think you're ours?" She did not answer, but her hand moved slightly, fingers curling against the blanket, and even that small gesture made the warmth in my chest bloom brighter. The wolf settled deeper, as if it had found something it had been searching for all these years. I stayed there until dawn painted the windows gold, watching her breathe, feeling something I had thought long dead stirring back to life. The bond, if that was what this was, growing stronger with each passing hour, and wondering if I was about to make the biggest mistake of my cursed life, or if I had finally found the one thing that could save me. The morning brought consequences, as mornings always did. I woke in the chair beside her bed, neck stiff, back aching. Sunlight streamed through the windows, bright and unforgiving. Elara was still asleep, her breathing deeper now, more regular. Color had returned to her cheeks. She would live. The realization brought a relief so profound it frightened me. When had I started caring this much about someone I had just met? A knock at the door. I stood, straightened my rumpled clothes, feeling the protest of muscles held in one position too long. My wolf stirred, immediately alert, protective instincts flaring. I opened the door to find Aldrich waiting with 2 servants and a breakfast tray. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "the court is asking questions." "Let them ask." The servants set up the breakfast in silence, stealing glances at the sleeping girl. Their eyes were wide with speculation. By noon, every person in the palace would know the cursed king had spent the night watching over a servant girl. The rumors would spread like wildfire. I did not care. The servants left. Aldrich remained, his expression troubled. "The head housekeeper wishes to speak with you," he said. "A woman named Livia Thornhill. She's the one who assigned Miss Moonshade to the garden yesterday." My jaw tightened. The wolf growled low in my chest. "Send her away." "Your Majesty, she's quite insistent. Claims she did nothing wrong, that it was standard procedure." "Standard procedure to send people out to die in blizzards?" I kept my voice low, not wanting to wake Elara, but Aldrich heard the danger in it, the way my alpha nature bled through when something threatened my pack. "No, she's done. I want her out of the palace by sunset." "You're going to fire the head housekeeper over this?" "I'm going to fire anyone who thinks it's acceptable to treat human lives as disposable." I moved to the window, looked out over the snow-covered gardens where I had found Elara dying. How many others, Aldrich? How many servants have we lost to cold or hunger or exhaustion because no one in this palace sees them as human beings? Aldrich was quiet for a long moment. "Too many," he said finally. "Your father, he tried to implement reforms early in his reign, but the nobles resisted, and then the wars came, and then Marcus's betrayal, and after that, everything was about survival. It ends today." I turned to face him. "New policy. Better quarters for the lower staff. Warmer clothes for outdoor work. Mandatory rest periods, fair wages, and anyone caught abusing their position will answer to me directly. To the Alpha King, not just the crown." The distinction was important. As king, I ruled through laws and councils. As alpha, I could enforce pack law, could use the dominance and strength that came with my nature to protect those weaker. It was a power my father had rarely used, believing it too primitive for a modern kingdom. But maybe that had been the problem. "The nobles will object," Aldrich said. "They'll say you're being soft, that you're overreaching, that this is about one girl and not actual policy. Then let them object. I've spent 9 years being exactly what they wanted. Maybe it's time I remembered what it means to be an alpha instead of just a crown." Movement from the bed drew our attention. Elara stirred, her head turning on the pillow. Her eyes fluttered open, unfocused at first, then sharpening as she took in her surroundings. The unfamiliar room, the fine furnishings, the king and his captain standing by the window. And then she saw me. Our eyes met across the room, and something passed between us. Recognition, though we had never met. Connection, though we were strangers. The bond, whatever it was, pulling tight like a rope between us. My wolf surged forward, wanting to go to her, to touch her again and feel that warmth. I held it back, barely. She tried to sit up, gasped at the effort. I was at her bedside in 3 strides, my hand on her shoulder before I could think better of it. Gentle but firm. The touch sent electricity through me, and I heard her breath catch. "Don't," I said. "You need to rest." "Your Majesty." Her voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. She tried to pull away, proper servant deference kicking in even through obvious weakness. "I shouldn't, this room. I don't belong. You nearly died last night." I kept my voice level, controlled, even as that strange warmth bloomed again in my chest. The wolf settled, content just to be near her. "You belong wherever I say you belong." Her eyes, I noticed, were gray, storm gray, with flecks of silver that caught the morning light. They studied my face with an intensity that should have made me uncomfortable but somehow did not. She was searching for something. Truth, maybe, or trying to reconcile the monster stories with the man before her. "You saved me," she said. "It was not a question. I found you in the snow. Anyone would have done the same." A small smile touched her lips. Sad. Knowing. "We both know that's not true, Your Majesty. I've been invisible in this palace for 5 years. No one would have noticed if I died out there. No one except you." She was right, of course. In 9 years of cold rule, I had never once intervened personally in a servant's welfare, had never noticed them as individuals, had never cared enough to learn their names or hear their stories. They were part of the palace machinery, as invisible as the stones in the walls, until this one. "What were you doing out there?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "In the storm." "My assignment, Your Majesty." The head housekeeper said the roses needed trimming before the solstice feast, that the garden had to be perfect. She looked down at her hands, fingers still showing traces of frostbite. She gave me extra work because I spoke up about another servant being sick, said I needed to learn my place. The fury came swift and cold. Not the hot rage that triggered the curse, but something more dangerous. The protective instinct of an alpha whose pack member had been harmed. Livia Thornhill would be lucky if I only fired her. "The head housekeeper will no longer be a problem," Aldrich said from his position by the door. His tone suggested this was not up for debate. Elara's eyes widened with alarm. "You can't. She'll lose her position because of me. The other servants, they'll hate me. They'll think I'm trying to rise above my station." "She'll lose her position because she endangered a life," I corrected. "Because she abused her power and nearly killed someone. You did nothing wrong. And the servants who matter will understand that." I could see the fear in her eyes, the lifetime of being powerless, of learning that speaking up only brought punishment. But beneath it, I saw something else, a spark of defiance, of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. "Tell me something, Elara Moonshade," I said, sitting on the edge of the bed so we were more level. The informality was improper, but I was tired of maintaining distance. "When you were out there freezing, what were you thinking about?" She hesitated, clearly unused to anyone asking her opinion about anything. "That I wanted to matter," she said finally. "That I was tired of just existing, of being invisible, of going through each day knowing I'd never be more than furniture that occasionally needed feeding." The raw honesty in her words cut deeper than any blade. Because I understood, had spent 9 years making myself invisible in a different way, hiding behind the crown and the curse and the carefully maintained walls. 2 people trapped in different kinds of cages. "You matter," I said, and I meant it, more than you know, more than I can explain. "Why?" The question was barely a whisper. "Why do you care? You don't even know me." "I don't know." The admission felt like surrender, but when I touched you, when I carried you inside, something changed. The curse that's plagued me for 9 years, the beast that kills when I feel too strongly, it stayed quiet, like your presence calmed it. Her hand moved, slowly, until it rested on top of mine. The touch was feather-light, but I felt it through my entire body. The bond strengthened, solidifying into something I could almost see in my mind's eye, golden threads connecting us. "What does that mean?" she asked. "I wish I knew, but I'm going to find out." A knock interrupted whatever she might have said. A different servant entered, this one carrying folded clothes and a tray of tea. She set them down with quick efficiency, keeping her eyes lowered. "Your Majesty," she said with a curtsy, "the council is assembling for the morning session. They're asking for you. Tell them I'll be there when I'm ready." "Your Majesty, it's urgent. Something about reports from the border." "They said," she hesitated, "they said it concerns your uncle." Marcus. The name sent ice through my veins. My uncle, who had fled 9 years ago after cursing me and helping kill my father. Marcus Wolfborn, 50 years old now and still nursing whatever grudge had driven him to betray his own blood. Reports suggested he had allied with the sorcerer Malachar, learning dark magic, gathering strength, waiting for the right moment to return. If he was moving, if he was making his play, then the kingdom was in danger. "I need to go," I said to Elara, standing reluctantly. "The council, they need me." "I'll be fine." Her voice was stronger now. "Go. Do what you need to do." I reached the door, then stopped, looked back at her, small and pale against the white linens, but with steel in her eyes that I was only beginning to see. "Stay safe," I said, "please." "Come back," she replied. "That's an order from someone who's tired of being invisible." Despite everything, despite the urgency and the fear and the weight of responsibility, I smiled. "Yes, ma'am." Then I was running through the palace corridors, already pulling off my rumpled clothes, already reaching for the armor and weapons I had not worn in months. The cursed king had to face his demons, both the ones that lurked in his bloodline and the ones gathering at his borders. But for the first time since the curse took hold, I had something worth fighting for beyond duty and crown. I had someone waiting for me to come home. The armor felt heavier than I remembered, but right, like putting on an old skin. 10 minutes. That was all the time I had given myself to transform from king to warrior. My hands moved through the familiar motions, buckling leather straps, tightening metal plates, checking the edge of my sword. The blade sang as I drew it from its sheath, the sound resonating with my wolf's approval. Still sharp, still hungry. Some things never changed. My personal guard assembled in the courtyard below. 20 men, all alphas or strong betas, the best fighters in the kingdom. They had trained for 9 years under Aldrich's command, preparing for a war they hoped would never come. Their faces were grim as they checked weapons and mounted horses, their wolves recognizing the hunt call even if their human minds tried to deny it. They knew what rode with them, not just their king, but the curse that lived inside him. I descended the stairs 2 at a time, my mind already calculating distances, strategies, the quickest route to the border. Aldrich had taken 50 men on reconnaissance 3 days ago to investigate the disappearances. If Marcus had ambushed them with dark creatures, if the sorcerer Malachar was truly involved, then 50 might not have been enough. It might already be too late. No. I pushed the thought away. Aldrich was the best soldier I had ever known. He had survived the war that killed my father, survived battles that would have broken lesser men. He would hold. He had to hold. The courtyard was controlled chaos, servants running with supplies, grooms saddling horses with military efficiency, my guards forming ranks with the precision that came from years of training. And standing at the edge of it all, wrapped in a cloak too large for her frame, was Elara. She should not have been there, should have stayed in her room where it was safe, where my wolf could know she was protected. But she stood in the morning cold, watching me with those storm-gray eyes that saw too much, and I found myself crossing to her before I could think better of it. "You should be inside," I said, keeping my voice low. My alpha nature wanted to command, to order her to safety, but something about her made me hold back. "I wanted to see you off." Her voice was steady despite the fear I could see flickering behind her gaze. "To make sure you're really going." "I have to. Aldrich is out there. My men are dying." "And Marcus?" I paused. My uncle is 50 years old now, and he spent 9 of those years learning dark magic from a sorcerer who makes nightmares look tame. If he's finally making his move, I'm the only one who can stop him. "I know." She reached out, hesitated, then laid her hand on my armored chest, right above my heart. The touch sent warmth flooding through me, even through the metal. The bond between us, barely a day old, pulsed with life. Be careful. Please." The curse should have stirred, should have responded to the fear and anger already building in my veins. But it stayed quiet, content, as if her touch was a shield against the darkness Marcus had planted inside me. "I will," I said, "and I'll come back. That's a promise. Don't make promises you can't keep." "Then I'll keep this one." I covered her hand with mine, felt the bond strengthen further. "Wait for me. Always." I mounted my horse, a massive black stallion that tolerated my alpha dominance because it recognized a predator. The guards fell in around me, their formation tight and professional. At the gate, I looked back one last time. Elara stood where I had left her, a small figure against the gray stone of the palace, her hand still pressed to her chest where she had touched me. My wolf whined, wanting to stay, to guard, to protect. But duty called louder. We rode hard. The journey to the border took 3 hours at a full gallop, our horses' breath steaming in the cold air. 3 hours of watching the landscape change from gentle farmland to rough hills, then to the scarred wasteland where my father had died. The old battlefield where Marcus's betrayal had cost us everything. I had not returned here since that day. Had sent others to retrieve the bodies, to mark the graves, to do the grim work of counting our dead. The place was cursed, they said, tainted ground where the veil between worlds grew thin. Looking at it now, feeling my wolf recoil from the wrongness in the air, I believed them. The earth was blackened, not with fire, but with corruption that had seeped into the soil and refused to fade. Nothing grew here, no grass, no trees, no life of any kind. Just twisted rock formations and patches of dead ground that looked like open wounds in the earth. And in the center of it all, the ruins of the old fortress. Once, this had been a stronghold, a place of power that guarded the northern approach to our kingdom. My grandfather had commanded it during the first border wars. My father had been born within its walls. Now it was broken stone and shattered dreams, a monument to everything we had lost. Smoke rose from somewhere beyond the ruins, black smoke that smelled wrong, not wood burning, something else, something that made my wolf snarl in recognition. Dark magic, blood sacrifice, the stench of Malakar's power. We slowed as we approached, the horses sensing danger even if they could not name it. I raised my hand, signaling the guards to spread out, to approach with caution. They moved like shadows, silent and deadly, weapons drawn. Alphas on the hunt. Then we crested the final hill and saw what waited below. Battle. Aldrich and his men had made a stand at the edge of the ruins. They fought in a tight circle, backs to a crumbling wall, surrounded on all sides by creatures that defied nature. The survivors had called them shadow wolves, but that description did not capture the horror they represented. They were massive, easily twice the size of a natural wolf, bigger even than an alpha in full transformation. Their fur was black, but not the black of a healthy animal. This was the black of rot, of decay, of something dead that refused to lie still. Their eyes glowed red in the morning light, and when they moved, they left trails of darkness behind them, as if reality itself recoiled from their presence. Corpses animated by dark magic, wolves that had died in some long-ago battle, raised by Malakar's power and twisted into weapons. Marcus stood at the edge of the battle, watching his creations work with the cold calculation I remembered. Even from this distance, I recognized my uncle. Taller than me, broader, with the same dark hair and strong features that marked him as my father's brother. He wore armor that looked like it had been forged in a nightmare, black metal etched with symbols that hurt to look at directly, that made my wolf want to turn away. And beside him stood a figure in robes so dark they seemed to drink the light. The sorcerer, Malakar. I could feel the wrongness radiating from him like heat from a forge, ancient, powerful, absolutely corrupted. My hand tightened on my sword. The anger that had been building since the messenger arrived crystallized into something sharp and cold. They had ambushed my men, killed my people, threatened everything I had spent 9 years trying to protect. The curse stirred. I felt it wake in my chest like a dragon opening one eye. That familiar burn in my veins, the way my vision began to tint red at the edges, the sensation of my humanity starting to slip away, replaced by something ancient and hungry and absolutely merciless. Not now, I whispered to myself, to the beast. Not yet. Aldrich needs me in control. But the curse did not care about need. It had been asleep for too long, held down by iron will and emotional emptiness. Now, with real feeling flooding through me, with genuine anger and fear and desperate concern for my friend, it scented opportunity, scented the chance to break free and run wild. "Hold!" I commanded my guards, my alpha voice carrying weight that made even the horses still. "We assess first." "Your Majesty," one of them said quietly, his own wolf on edge. "Captain Stone's forces are failing, if we don't act now." I know. I was already calculating. Aldrich had maybe 30 men left standing. The Shadow Wolves numbered at least 50. And that was not counting Marcus and the sorcerer, who had not yet entered the fight directly. We could charge in. Overwhelming force. hoped to break the creatures before they adapted, but if the curse took me in the middle of battle, I would be as dangerous to my own men as to the enemy, more dangerous even, because they would not expect it. Movement caught my eye. One of Aldrich's soldiers broke from the defensive circle, trying to make a run for the ruins, maybe hoping to find cover, maybe just panicking. It did not matter. 3 shadow wolves peeled off from the main pack and ran him down in seconds. His scream cut off abruptly. The curse surged. I felt my fingers start to elongate, claws pushing through skin, felt my teeth sharpen, felt the wolf inside me demanding to be released, to tear and rend and kill everything that threatened the pack. "Your Majesty," another guard said urgently, alarm bleeding into his voice. "Your eyes." I knew what he saw. Gold bleeding into the whites, the first sign of transformation, the moment before the monster took over. I thought of Elara, her hand on my chest, the warmth that had somehow held the curse at bay. I thought of her voice saying, "Come back," and the way she had looked at me like I was worth saving. The curse hesitated. It was enough. I pulled back from the edge, forced the transformation to stop. My vision cleared. My hands returned to normal. The burn in my veins subsided to a manageable level. But it had been close. Too close. "We go in fast," I said, my voice rough but controlled. "Split into 2 groups. Drake, you take half and draw the creature's attention. Hit-and-run tactics. Keep them busy. I'll take the rest and break through to Aldrich's position." "Your Majesty, that puts you in the most danger," Drake protested, though his wolf recognized the alpha command in my tone. "That's why I'm doing it. I'm the one who can survive if things go wrong." The unspoken truth hung heavy. If I transformed, if the curse took me fully, at least I would be pointed at our enemies. We charged. The moment we crested the hill at full speed, Marcus saw us. Even across the distance, I felt his gaze lock onto mine. Something passed between us. Recognition. Hatred. And beneath it, a grief neither of us had ever spoken about. 2 men who had once been family, now divided by blood and betrayal, and 9 years of festering resentment. The shadow wolves turned toward us as one, responding to some unheard command from Malachar. Up close, they were even more horrifying. Their mouths opened too wide, revealing teeth that dripped with black ichor. Their movements were jerky, unnatural, like puppets being controlled by an amateur, which I realized was exactly what they were. Not living creatures, but corpses animated by dark magic. No pain, no fear, no mercy. Drake's group peeled off, drawing half the pack away with a hail of arrows and shouted challenges designed to trigger the wolves' hunting instincts. I led my remaining guards straight into the gap they created, sword already singing as the first creature lunged. The blade bit deep. Black blood sprayed, and the shadow wolf collapsed. But it did not die. Even with its side split open, it tried to rise, tried to keep fighting. I brought my sword down on its neck, severing the head, and finally it lay still. This was going to be a long fight. We cut through the creatures with brutal efficiency. My guards were good, well-trained, disciplined. They fought in pairs, covering each other's blind spots, making every strike count. But for every shadow wolf we killed, 2 more seemed to appear from the ruins, called forth by Malachar's power. And we were running out of time. I could see Aldrich now, standing in the center of his remaining men. His armor was dented and bloodied, his movements showing the exhaustion of someone who had been fighting for hours. But his sword arm moved with mechanical precision, strike after strike, keeping the creatures at bay through pure will. "Hold on," I wanted to shout, "I'm coming." A shadow wolf leaped at me from the side. I ducked under its attack, let it sail overhead, and drove my sword up through its belly as it passed. The creature crashed to the ground behind me, thrashing. I did not wait to see if it would rise again. 10 more steps. 8, 5. We broke through to Aldrich's position. My guards immediately reinforced the circle, plugging gaps, giving the exhausted soldiers a moment to breathe. Several collapsed immediately, their strength spent. Aldrich turned, saw me, and something like relief flashed across his weathered face. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice hoarse, "you shouldn't have come." "Probably not." I took position beside him, shoulder to shoulder, the way we had fought 100 times in training. "But I'm tired of losing people I care about." He smiled, fierce and proud despite the blood on his face. "Then let's make sure that doesn't happen today." Together we fought, and for a few moments it was like the old days, before the crown, before the curse. when we were just two warriors who trusted each other absolutely. But we were still outnumbered, still exhausted, and Marcus had not yet made his move. I saw him walking through the chaos, untouched by the battle raging around him. The shadow wolves parted for him like water, recognizing their master's ally. His eyes never left mine. "Nephew," he called out. His voice carried clearly despite the sounds of combat. "You've grown. Last time I saw you, you were just a boy playing at being king." The curse stirred again. I pushed it down, kept my voice level. "And you were a coward running from justice," I replied. "Some things never change." Marcus smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Justice? Is that what you call your father's tyranny? The way he ground entire families into dust for the crime of questioning his rule? He was a good king. He was my father. He was a monster. And he was turning you into one too. I saw it, Theron. Saw the way he trained you, the way he beat the compassion out of you piece by piece." Marcus stopped just outside sword range. "I did you a favor, working with Malachar to curse you. Without your ability to feel, you can't become the tyrant he was." The words hit like physical blows, because there was truth in them, twisted though it was. My father had been hard, unforgiving. He had believed that strength required the death of compassion, that to rule was to dominate. But he had also been my father, and Marcus had helped kill him, had cursed me, had condemned me to 9 years of living death. "You betrayed your own blood," I said quietly, feeling the wolf rising. "You worked with dark magic to destroy your family. Don't pretend it was about saving me." Marcus drew his own sword. The blade was black, etched with the same disturbing symbols as his armor. Malachar's work. "I can see you still don't understand, but you will. When the curse finally breaks you, when you kill everyone you love, you'll understand that I was trying to spare you that fate." He attacked. I had forgotten how fast Marcus was, even at 50. He moved like lightning, his black sword a blur of killing edges. I barely got my own blade up in time to parry. The impact sent shockwaves up my arm, and I realized with cold certainty that something about Malachar's magic had enhanced my uncle beyond normal alpha strength. We traded blows, circling each other while the battle raged around us. He was stronger than I remembered. Faster. The dark magic had given him abilities that should not exist. But I had spent 9 years training. 9 years channeling every emotion, every feeling, every ounce of rage and grief into the perfection of combat. My technique was flawless. My timing exact. We were evenly matched. "Is this all the great cursed king has to offer?" Marcus taunted between strikes. "Where's the monster I've heard so much about? Show me the beast that killed 3 men with his bare hands." The curse responded to his words, surging up my spine. My vision flickered red. For a moment I saw Marcus not as a man but as prey, something to be torn apart, devoured. I stumbled, and Marcus's blade slipped past my guard. Pain exploded across my ribs as the black sword bit deep. Not a killing blow, but close enough. The cold of the cursed metal spread through me like poison. Blood ran hot down my side. The curse smelled it and roared. This was it. The moment I had been dreading for 9 years. The moment the monster took over and nothing I did would matter anymore. But then I felt it. A warmth in my chest. Distant but growing stronger. The bond. Elara, miles away in the palace, somehow sensing my distress. I felt her hand on my chest again, felt her calm washing over me like cool water on burning skin. The curse retreated. My vision cleared. My humanity reasserted itself. I was in control. Marcus saw the change and snarled, "Impossible! Nothing breaks a curse laid by Malachar. Nothing." "Maybe," I said, getting to my feet despite the wound in my side, "but she's not nothing." I attacked with renewed vigor. Every strike was precise, calculated, driving Marcus back step by step. He was stronger, but I was fighting for something he could never understand. I was fighting for this possibility of being more than my worst impulses, for a future where the curse did not define me, for a woman who believed I was worth saving. Our blades met in a shower of sparks. Marcus's face twisted with rage and something that might have been fear. "You should have killed me when you had the chance," I said. "I'm not done yet." He raised his free hand and shouted something in a language I did not recognize. The words made reality flinch. The sorcerer responded. Malachar stepped forward, his robes swirling with darkness that seemed to have weight and substance. He raised his hands and the air itself began to scream. The shadow wolves stopped fighting. They turned as one toward their master, their bodies already dissolving into black mist. The mist flowed toward Malachar, feeding him, making him grow larger and more terrible with each passing second. "He's using them!" Aldrich shouted. "Using their deaths to fuel a ritual." "What kind of ritual?" "The kind that ends kingdoms." Malachar's voice boomed across the battlefield, each word striking like thunder. 9 years ago, I cursed the boy king, made him a slave to his own nature. Today I will complete the work. Today his transformation becomes permanent. He will be beast forever, and this kingdom will fall. "No," I whispered. "Yes," Marcus said behind me, his voice almost sad. "And when you're nothing but a mindless monster, I'll put you down like the animal you are. The throne will be mine. The kingdom will kneel, and that girl you're so enamored with will learn what happens to those who stand between me and my destiny." The threat against Elara snapped something inside me. Not the curse, something deeper, something primal, the alpha protecting his mate. The bond flared to life, and through it, impossibly, I felt Elara respond, felt her power, untrained and raw, reaching across the distance to touch me. The moonshade gift her mother had possessed, the magic that had saved my mother during childbirth, the magic that could break curses. The ritual reached its crescendo. Dark energy poured from Malachar, reaching across the battlefield like grasping fingers. It touched me, and I felt the curse surge in response. Felt my body begin to change, bones shifting, muscles tearing and reforming, my humanity fragmenting. This was the end. But then warmth flooded through me. Not from the curse, from the bond. From Elara, who had somehow sensed what was happening and thrown everything she had across the distance between us. Light met darkness, and for a moment the world held its breath. I felt the curse recoil, felt Malachar's ritual shatter against the purity of Elara's power. The transformation reversed. My body returned to human form, gasping and shaking but whole. The sorcerer stumbled back, his ritual broken. Marcus stared in disbelief. "Impossible," Malachar hissed. "The Moonshade line is dead. That meddling woman sacrificed herself 23 years ago. There should be no one left with that power." But there was, and she was learning to use it. Through the bond, I felt Elara collapse from the effort, felt her distress. She had pushed too hard, given too much, but she had saved me. Again. Malachar was gathering power once more, preparing something final. Marcus tried to stop him, some remnant of conscience making him hesitate. "Uncle, this is madness. We can still negotiate, still find another way." "You failed me," Malachar snarled. "Just like you failed your brother. You're too weak, too sentimental. If you want something done right—" He raised his hands. The spell that formed was massive, terrible, the kind that would kill everyone on this battlefield, including himself, if it meant destroying me. Marcus looked at me one last time, at the nephew he had cursed and hunted and tried to destroy. And I saw something in his eyes, regret, recognition, the ghost of the uncle he had been before ambition corrupted him. "I'm sorry," he said. Then he threw himself at Malachar. The spell discharged, but instead of striking me, it caught Marcus. His body convulsed, shadow and light warring within him. He screamed, but the sound was defiant, victorious even. His last act was not revenge or cruelty. It was protection. It was redemption. Marcus Wolfborn fell and did not rise again. I stood over my uncle's body, feeling the weight of 9 years of hatred and anger dissolving into something more complicated: grief, understanding, the recognition that people were more than their worst moments. Malachar stared at the corpse, rage and disbelief warring on his face. "After everything I promised him, everything he wanted, he threw it away for you. People surprise you," I said quietly. "They change their minds, choose differently than you expect. That's what makes them human." The sorcerer's eyes fixed on me. "Then I'll take what I need from you by force." He began to glow, dark energy crackling around him like lightning. He was going to detonate himself, turn his own body into a bomb of dark magic. But he had made one critical mistake. He had hurt someone I cared about, had pushed Elara to the brink, and my wolf, so carefully controlled for 9 years, would not tolerate that. I let it out. Not the curse, not the twisted thing Marcus had created, but my true alpha nature, the power that had been suppressed by fear and control and 9 years of careful restraint. I transformed, fully, completely, and for the first time since the curse took hold, I was in control of it. My wolf form was massive, black as midnight, with eyes that glowed gold instead of red. This was not corruption. This was pure alpha power. This was what I should have been all along. I leaped. Malachar tried to finish his spell, but I was faster. My jaws closed around his throat before he could complete the incantation. And when I ended the sorcerer who had plagued my kingdom for nearly a decade, it felt right. It felt like justice. The darkness that had been gathering dissipated. Malachar's body dissolved into ash, and I stood in the center of the battlefield, fully wolf, fully in control, for the first time in 9 years. My guards stared. Aldrich stared. Even the surviving shadow wolves, now masterless, hesitated. Then Aldrich knelt. "Your Majesty," he said, "you did it. You're in control." One by one, the other soldiers followed suit. Not in fear, in respect, in recognition of an alpha who had finally mastered himself. I transformed back to human form, the process smooth and natural instead of the painful wrench it had always been before. The curse was still there, still part of me, but it was tamed now, integrated. No longer the master, but a tool I could use. Elara had done this. Her power, her belief, her refusal to let me be consumed. She had given me back myself. "We need to move," I said, my voice rough. "Tend the wounded. Gather our dead." I paused, looking at Marcus's body. "And prepare him for burial. He died protecting us. That earns him at least that much." The journey back took 6 hours. We had wounded to transport, bodies to recover. Marcus's corpse was wrapped in a plain cloth, no honors but no desecration either. The shadow wolves had dissipated when Malachar died, returning to whatever rest they had been denied. I rode with my thoughts as company, the bond with Elara a steady presence in my chest. She was resting now. I could feel it, exhausted but alive, safe. When we reached the palace at sunset, servants lined the courtyard. When they saw us alive, saw me whole and in control, a cheer went up. The cursed king had gone to war, and he had returned victorious. More importantly, he had returned human. No longer fighting himself, no longer one bad day away from becoming a monster. I dismounted and immediately went to find her. She was in her room in the east wing, sleeping fitfully. Mira sat beside the bed, her face drawn with worry. "She collapsed after you left," Mira explained quietly. "Just fell unconscious. The physicians don't know what's wrong." "I do." I moved to the bedside, took Elara's hand. She used her gift, reached across miles to save me. It took everything she had. "Is she going to be all right?" "She has to be." I pressed her hand to my chest, over my heart. "Come back," I whispered. "You told me to come back. Now it's your turn." Her eyes fluttered open, gray meeting gold. The bond pulsed between us, and I saw the moment she realized I was really there, really safe. "You're alive," she breathed. "Thanks to you." She smiled weakly. "We make a good team." "We do." I touched her face gently. "Rest now. When you wake up, we have a lot to talk about." "About what?" "About the fact that you're a Moonshade healer. About the bond between us. About what happens next." I leaned down, pressed my forehead to hers. "About the future I want to build with you." Her hand came up to touch my cheek. "Ask me again," she whispered, "when I'm not dying from magical exhaustion. Ask me what you wanted to ask before you left." "I will, I promised. When you're ready. However long that takes." Her eyes drifted closed. "Soon," she murmured. "Ask me soon." I stayed with her until she fell into true sleep, healing sleep. Then I let Aldrich drag me to the physicians to treat my own wounds. The curse was quiet. Not gone. I could still feel it, coiled in the depths of my soul. But changed. Transformed by Elara's power and my own acceptance of what I was. The council would have questions tomorrow. The court would gossip. There would be investigations and reforms and 100 political complications. But tonight, I let myself feel something I had not felt in 9 years. Hope. Real, honest hope for a future that might include more than just duty and survival. A future with her. 3 days after the battle that changed everything, I stood before the council once more. 3 days of healing, of letting the physicians stitch wounds and tend injuries, of watching Elara slowly regain her strength, her Moonshade gift replenishing itself like water filling a well. 3 days of knowing that when I walked into that chamber, everything would change. The armor stayed in storage this time. This was not about war. This was about the future. I chose black, as always. A coat embroidered with silver thread and patterns that suggested wolf fur without being ostentatious. Boots polished to a mirror shine. The crown, simple iron with no jewels, sat heavy on my head. A warrior king's crown, a reminder that I had earned this throne in blood. But today I was here to claim something more important than power. Aldrich waited outside my chambers, already dressed in his ceremonial uniform. At 45, he looked older than he had 3 days ago, the strain of battle written in new lines around his eyes. But there was satisfaction there, too. We had won. We had survived. "Ready?" he asked. "As I'll ever be." I adjusted the crown, feeling its weight settle. They're not going to like this. They never like change. But after what happened at the border, after seeing you in control of the full transformation, they'd be fools to challenge you. He paused. "Are you sure this is what you want?" "You could wait. Give the court time to adjust. Let Elara recover fully." "I've waited 9 years, Aldrich. 9 years of being what everyone else needed me to be. I'm done waiting." "Then let's go remind them who rules here." The council chamber fell silent as I entered. All 12 nobles were present, seated in their hereditary positions around the long table. Lord Brennan sat at the far end, his expression carefully neutral. But I could see the calculation in his eyes, sharpened by his 40 years of service to the crown, the way he studied me, looking for any sign that the battle had broken something in me. He would be disappointed. "Your Majesty," Brennan began, rising, "we are relieved to see you recovered. The entire kingdom has been concerned about your welfare." "The battle was 3 days ago," I said, moving to my chair at the head of the table. I remained standing, using my height and alpha presence deliberately. "I assume you've all read the reports, Aldrich's account of what happened." "We have," Brennan acknowledged. "It's quite remarkable. The sorcerer Malachar is dead. Your uncle Marcus fell in battle, and you, according to multiple witnesses, achieved full transformation while maintaining complete control." He paused. "Something that should be impossible for someone under a curse." "The curse is still there," I said honestly, "but it's changed, integrated. I'm no longer fighting it every moment of every day. I can transform fully and remain myself." "How?" another noble asked. "What changed?" "Someone helped me." I kept my voice level. "Someone with gifts I didn't know existed. Someone who risked everything to save me when she had every reason to let me fall." "The servant girl," Brennan said, "Miss Moonshade. Her name is Elara. Use it." The rebuke was gentle but firm. Several nobles shifted uncomfortably. They were not used to being corrected on matters of protocol. "Very well," Brennan said. "Elara Moonshade. We've been researching her lineage. The Moonshade family were healers who served the crown for generations. The last known Moonshade was a woman named Lyra, who died 23 years ago, saving Queen Elara during a difficult childbirth. My mother, the woman who died bringing me into the world." "The same," Brennan confirmed. "If Elara is truly descended from that line, she carries significant power. Power that many would consider dangerous." "She saved my life," I said, "multiple times, broke a curse that should have been permanent, destroyed the sorcerer's ritual from miles away. If that's dangerous, then I want more danger in this kingdom." "Your Majesty," Brennan's voice took on that careful tone he used when disagreeing with a king, "we understand your gratitude, but gratitude should not be confused with," he chose his words carefully, "with other feelings. The court expects you to marry strategically, to secure alliances, to think of the kingdom's future. I am thinking of the kingdom's future." I placed my hands on the table, leaning forward. "For 9 years I've done everything by the book, made every decision based on cold logic, ruled with my head instead of my heart. And what did it get us? Servants treated like furniture. Corruption so deep we didn't see Marcus building an army on our borders. A king so isolated he nearly lost himself completely." Silence fell. They had not expected this. Had thought I would make some minor announcement, perhaps elevate Elara to a position at court. They had not expected a challenge to the entire system they had built their power on. "I'm not asking your permission," I continued. "I'm telling you what will happen. 2 weeks from today, I will announce my intention to marry Elara Moonshade. She will be trained in court matters. She will learn what she needs to know. And when the time is right, she will become your queen." "Your Majesty," another noble protested, standing. "The girl is common-born. She has no family, no lands, no political value. An alliance with Lady Seraphina would secure the southern territories. It would unite the kingdom under one banner. I don't need territories secured through marriage. I can do that with treaties and trade. What I need is someone I can trust, someone who sees me as a person instead of a crown. I met each of their eyes in turn, someone who makes me a better king. And if the curse returns," Brennan asked quietly. "If you have a moment of weakness, then I'll deal with it, with her help. Because that's what partnership means. Even if it costs you the throne, even if it costs me everything." The words hung in the air. Every person in that chamber understood what I had just said. I would rather lose the crown than lose her. Would rather walk away from power than compromise on this. It was the truth, and they needed to hear it. Lord Thane, one of the younger nobles who had fought at the border, stood slowly. "Your Majesty," he said, "I was there. I saw what Miss Moonshade did. Saw her save you when no one else could. Saw her gift in action. If she can do that, if she can face darkness without flinching, then I say we should be grateful." He looked around the table. "She's already proven herself more valuable than any political alliance." Murmurs of agreement. Not from everyone. Brennan's face had gone carefully blank, and I could see several of the older nobles bristling with disapproval. But it was something. A crack in the wall. Brennan stood, drawing all eyes to him. "Your Majesty," he said formally, "if this is truly your will, the council cannot stop you. But we ask for time. 2 weeks is not enough to prepare the court, to help Miss Moonshade adjust to her new role, to smooth the political complications this will create." He paused. "Give us 1 month. Let us do this properly." It was a compromise, a way for him to save face while accepting the inevitable. Smart politics, actually. 3 weeks, I countered. Not a month. 3 weeks from today, we announce the engagement. That gives you time to prepare, gives Elara time to learn what she needs to know, and shows the court that I'm not going to wait forever. Brennan inclined his head. 3 weeks, then. And in the meantime? In the meantime, Elara stays in the guest quarters. She is to be treated with the respect due a future queen. She will have tutors, advisors, whatever she needs, but no restrictions, no guards unless she requests them. She is not a prisoner. She is my guest. Am I clear? Crystal clear, Your Majesty. Good. Then this meeting is adjourned. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. Oh, and Chancellor? Anyone who questions her, anyone who makes her life difficult, answers to me. Not to the court, not to the council, to the Alpha King. Remember that. The threat was unmistakable. Several nobles paled. I left them sitting in stunned silence, feeling lighter than I had in years. I found Elara in the library, a book open in her lap, but her eyes distant. She looked up as I entered, and something in her expression shifted. Relief mixed with nervousness. "How did it go?" she asked. "I told them I'm making you my queen, that they have 3 weeks to accept it or find new positions." She set the book aside carefully. And they agreed? They didn't have much choice. I sat beside her, took her hand. The bond between us pulsed warm and steady. "Elara, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me." "Always." "Are you sure this is what you want? Because once we announce this, there's no going back. You'll be thrust into a world you're not prepared for. The court will scrutinize everything you do. Some will hate you just for existing. Your life will never be your own again." She was quiet for a long moment, her gray eyes searching mine. 3 days ago, I was invisible, she said finally. A servant everyone looked through. Then you found me, saved me, showed me that I could be more than what I thought I was. She squeezed my hand. I'm terrified, but I'm more terrified of going back to being invisible, of not mattering. You matter, I know, because you showed me I do. She smiled, soft and real. So yes, I want this. I want you. I want the chance to make a difference, even if it's hard, even if it's terrifying. Then I'll keep my promise. I pulled her hand to my chest, over my heart. 3 weeks from now, I'll ask you properly, with the whole court watching. I'll be ready. The next 3 weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. Elara was fitted for new clothes, taught court etiquette by the best instructors we could find, introduced to the complex web of noble families and their alliances. She met with merchants, learned about trade routes and taxation, studied the laws that governed the kingdom. And she was brilliant, not because she had natural talent for politics, which she did not, but because she approached everything with genuine curiosity and honest compassion. When she met with the heads of merchant guilds, she asked about their workers' welfare. When she studied taxation policy, she questioned why servants paid the same rates as nobles despite earning a fraction of the income. She made people think, made them question assumptions they had held for generations. Not everyone appreciated it. Lady Seraphina Ashford, the woman the council had wanted me to marry, held several gatherings where she made pointed comments about appropriate breeding and proper education. A faction of older nobles began meeting privately, and Aldrich's spies reported they were discussing ways to challenge the match. But most, surprisingly, came around, especially after Elara began visiting the servants' quarters, talking to people about their concerns, implementing small changes that improved daily life. She had lived their reality. She understood it in ways no noble-born queen ever could, and the servants loved her for it. I spent my days rebuilding after the battle, reinforcing border defenses, investigating how deeply Marcus's influence had spread, rooting out anyone who had been loyal to my uncle, rewarding those who had fought bravely at the old battlefield. Lord Brennan remained chancellor, but I promoted several younger nobles to positions of influence, fresh perspectives, new ways of thinking, people who understood that the old ways had nearly gotten us destroyed. The evenings belonged to Elara and me. We would walk in the gardens, now cleared of snow and showing the first signs of spring. We would sit in the library, talking about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms, building the foundation of something that might last. The curse stayed quiet. The wolf was content. For the first time in 9 years, I felt almost whole. On the night before the announcement, I could not sleep. I stood on my balcony, looking out over the kingdom I ruled, thinking about tomorrow. About the choice I was making and all its consequences. Footsteps behind me, Aldrich's familiar tread. "Nervous?" he asked, joining me at the railing. "Terrified." "Good. That means you know what you're risking." He was quiet for a moment. "I've known you since you were born, Theron. Watched you grow from a boy into a king. And I'm telling you now, this is the right choice." "How can you be sure?" "Because I see the way you look at her, the way she looks at you. That's not just attraction or gratitude. That's the kind of partnership that makes legends." He smiled. "Your father would have approved, I think." "Eventually." He hated sentiment. He hated weakness. But Elara doesn't make you weak. She makes you stronger. That's the difference. The announcement ceremony was held in the Great Hall at noon. Every noble family in the kingdom had been invited. Every merchant guild, every military officer, every person of influence or power. The hall was packed, hundreds of bodies pressed together, all waiting to hear what their king would say. I stood on the dais in formal black and silver, the crown heavy on my head. Elara stood beside me in a dress of deep blue silk that Mira had helped her choose. She was nervous. I could feel it through the bond, but she kept her chin high and her gaze steady. Aldrich stood to my right, hand on his sword. Extra guards lined the walls. I had prepared for anything. Lord Brennan stood at the base of the dais, ready to conduct the ceremony. His expression was professional, but I caught the slight nod he gave me. Approval, or at least acceptance. "People of the realm," I began. My alpha voice carried clearly through the hall. 9 years ago, I took this throne under terrible circumstances. I was young, cursed, fighting myself every day. I ruled as I thought I should, with logic and distance. But distance has a cost. I paused, letting the words sink in. 3 weeks ago, I found a woman dying in the snow, a servant who had been sent out to work in lethal cold because someone decided her life didn't matter. I could have walked past, could have let someone else handle it. But something made me stop, made me care. I turned to Elara. She met my eyes, and I saw everything I needed in that gray gaze. Elara Moonshade saved my life, multiple times. She broke a curse that should have been permanent. She faced down a sorcerer and an army of dark creatures. She did all of this not for reward, but because it was right. I faced the crowd again. She showed me that strength is not about never feeling. It's about having someone beside you who makes you brave enough to feel. The hall was silent, every eye on us. "I'm not asking your permission to marry her. I'm telling you that I am. In 3 weeks, she will become your queen. And if any person in this hall has an objection, speak now." The silence stretched. Then Lord Brennan stepped forward, as we had arranged. "Your Majesty," he said loudly, "the council recognizes your right to choose your queen, but before this court we ask one question." He turned to face me fully. "Can you guarantee that you will never again pose a danger to your people because of the curse?" It was theater. We had agreed on this. But the question was real, and the court needed to hear my answer. "No," I said clearly, "I cannot guarantee that." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Elara's hand found mine. "I cannot guarantee it," I continued, "because I'm human, flawed, still learning. The curse is part of me. It always will be. But what I can guarantee is this. With Elara beside me, I'm a better king than I've ever been alone. stronger, more present, more human. I looked out at the assembled nobles. You want certainty? Here it is. Together we will serve this kingdom with everything we have, and if you can't accept that, then you're free to leave. Lord Thane stood. Your Majesty has my support. You and the future queen have my house's blessing. One by one, other nobles stood. Not all, but more than half the room. Brennan watched his carefully built consensus form, then inclined his head. Then it seems the matter is settled. He turned to the crowd. 3 weeks from today we will celebrate the royal wedding, and from that day forward, Elara Moonshade will be our queen. The hall erupted in applause. Not everyone, certainly. I could see faces twisted with disapproval, nobles already calculating how to use this against me. But enough were cheering that the sound was overwhelming. I took Elara's hands in mine, right there on the dais. Before these witnesses, I claim you as my intended, I said formally. In 3 weeks we will be wed. I'm terrified, she whispered, quiet enough that only I could hear. So am I, but we'll be terrified together. Then I kissed her, sealing the promise in front of the entire court. It was not proper. It was not dignified. It was perfect. The 3 weeks between the announcement and the wedding passed in a blur. There were fittings and rehearsals, political meetings and social gatherings. Elara handled it all with grace, though I could feel her exhaustion through the bond at the end of each day. There were challenges, too. 2 nobles resigned their positions in protest. A group of merchants tried to use the controversy to gain concessions. Lady Seraphina spread rumors about Elara using magical influence to seduce me. But for every person who objected, 3 more seemed to support us. The servants, of course, were ecstatic. Mira became Elara's unofficial bodyguard and closest advisor. And surprisingly, Lord Brennan proved to be an excellent ally, using his political skills to neutralize opposition before it could gain traction. On the night before the wedding, he came to my chambers alone. I wanted to apologize, he said without preamble, for trying to stop this, for not seeing what you saw. You were doing your job, protecting the kingdom from a king making emotional decisions. Was I? He moved to the window, looked out at the same view I had studied countless times. Or was I protecting an old man's idea of how things should be? Your father, he was brilliant, strategic, but he was also cold, and I watched what that coldness did to him, how it ate away at his humanity until there was nothing left but duty. He turned to face me. You're not going to make that mistake, because of her, and I'm grateful for that. He extended his hand. So thank you, Your Majesty, for being braver than I was. We shook hands, and I saw the sincerity in his weathered face. Thank you for everything, Chancellor. My father was lucky to have you. So am I. The wedding took place in the palace chapel, the same space where my parents had married 3 decades before. We could have used the great hall, could have made it a massive spectacle, but neither Elara nor I wanted that. We wanted something real. The guest list was small by royal standards, maybe 100 people. Aldrich walked Elara down the aisle, playing the role of father with a gruffness that could not quite hide his emotion. Mira stood as her witness, dressed in her finest, tears streaming down her face. The guards I had fought beside at the old battlefield lined the aisle in their dress uniforms, a silent promise that they would protect their new queen as fiercely as they protected their king. And at the altar I waited. She was beautiful. The dress was elegant but simple, white silk that flowed like water. Her blonde hair hung loose around her shoulders, held back by a delicate circlet. She looked like something from a fairy tale, but real, solid, mine. The ceremony itself was traditional. Vows spoken with voices that only trembled slightly, rings exchanged, simple bands that matched. When the priest said, "You may kiss your bride," I did. Soft, reverent, a promise more than a passion. We were married. The celebration afterward was joyful. Good food and better wine, music that made people want to dance, conversations that flowed naturally. This was not a political event. It was a party for people we actually cared about. I danced with Elara, spinning her around the floor while she laughed, danced with Mira, who whispered thank you for making my friend happy. Even danced with Aldrich, which was more of a formal march than actual dancing, but made the guards cheer. As the evening wound down, Elara and I slipped away. Not to the royal chambers yet. We walked instead to the rose garden where everything had started. The roses were in full bloom now, their scent heavy on the warm spring air. We stood where I had found her, nearly frozen, and I marveled at how different everything looked. How much had changed in just 3 months. "No regrets?" I asked, pulling her close. "None." She leaned against me, her head on my shoulder. "You? Not a single one. Even knowing it's going to be complicated. Even knowing the council will question every decision and the nobles will plot, and we'll have to work twice as hard to prove this isn't just about romance. Good. Because I'm not going anywhere." She turned in my arms to face me. "You're stuck with me, cursed king. Not cursed anymore, just king. Your king. Our king." She smiled. "We're partners now, remember?" Partners. I liked the sound of that. We stood there in the moonlight, two people who had found each other against all odds, and I thought about the future. It would not be easy. There would be challenges, conflicts, moments of doubt. The curse would always be part of me. The political battles would never fully end. But we would face them together. And that was enough. The years that followed proved me right. Elara became exactly the queen the kingdom needed. She was not interested in political games or social climbing. Instead, she focused on the people everyone else ignored. The servants, the poor, the forgotten corners of the realm where injustice festered in the dark. She established healing centers in every major city, training others with latent moonshade gifts. She reformed labor laws, making sure even the lowest servant had rights and protections. She sat in on council meetings and spoke up when decisions would hurt the vulnerable, never afraid to challenge nobles 3 times her age. Some never accepted her. Some continued to mutter about appropriate breeding and proper bloodlines. But the people loved her, and slowly even the stubborn nobles began to respect what she had accomplished. We had children. A daughter first, born 5 years into our marriage. She had her mother's gray eyes and my dark hair, and when she cried, the sound carried alpha power that made the windows rattle. We named her Lyra, after the grandmother who had died saving me. Then a son, 3 years later. He inherited Elara's healing gift, along with traces of alpha strength, a combination we had never seen before. Alexander, we called him. Strong defender, and he lived up to the name. Watching them grow, teaching them to be both powerful and kind, was the greatest privilege of my life. We raised them differently than I had been raised, with laughter and warmth, with the understanding that strength came from connection, not isolation. The curse never fully left. There were still moments, usually in the first few years, when anger surged and I felt it stir. But Elara was always there, her hand on my chest, her voice in my ear, pulling me back from the edge. And as the years passed, those moments became rarer. The wolf learned to coexist with the man, became part of me instead of something I fought. Aldrich served as captain until age forced him to retire at 60. We gave him a cottage on the palace grounds and a pension that ensured he would never want for anything. He spent his final years training the next generation of guards, passing on wisdom earned through decades of service. When he died, peacefully in his sleep at 70, we buried him with full military honors. Mira married her young captain, a man named Thomas, who had fought beside us at the old battlefield. They had 4 children, and Elara made Mira head of household staff. She ran the palace with efficiency and kindness in equal measure, becoming one of Elara's closest advisors. Lord Brennan served until his death 12 years into my marriage. We never became friends exactly, but we learned to respect each other. And on his deathbed, he told me he had been wrong, that love had made me a better king than strategy ever could. We promoted younger nobles to replace the old guard, people who understood that the kingdom's strength came from its people, not from maintaining rigid hierarchies. Slowly, the court transformed into something more just, more compassionate. The kingdom prospered, not because we were perfect, but because we tried, because we listened, because we remembered that power was a responsibility, not a privilege. And through it all, Elara and I walked together, partners, equals, 2 people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something better. 40 years after that night in the snow, I stood in the same rose garden. My hair had gone gray. My body carried the weight of decades of service, the old wounds from the battle with Marcus aching in cold weather. But my heart was light. Elara found me there, as she always did. Her hair was silver now, her face marked with the beautiful lines that came from years of laughter and tears. She took my hand, and the bond between us was as strong as ever. "Do you ever think about that night?" I asked. "When I found you here?" "Every day," she smiled. "It was the worst night of my life, and the best. Because that's when everything changed. Because that's when I found you." She leaned against me, fitting perfectly into the space beside my heart. When we found each other. Our children were grown now. Lyra had chosen to travel the realm, using her alpha strength and healing gifts to help those in need. Alexander was being groomed to take the throne, learning kingship from his parents with a patience and wisdom that made me proud. It was time we both knew to let the next generation lead. On the day of Alexander's coronation, I stood beside him on the dais, removed my iron crown and placed it on his head, passed on the burden and privilege of leadership to my son. "Take care of them," I told him quietly. "All of them. Not just the nobles and the wealthy, but the servants and the forgotten. Remember that every life matters." "I will, Father." He embraced me and I felt his alpha strength, solid, controlled, ready. I learned from the best. "You learned from your mother." I smiled. I just tried to keep up. Elara and I retired to a small estate in the countryside, not far from the palace, but far enough that we could live quietly. We kept a garden, hosted grandchildren who delighted in their grandparents' stories, read books we had never had time for. And every evening, as the sun set, we would walk together through our own small rose garden, holding hands, talking about everything and nothing, simply being. It was peace. We had 5 more years like that. 5 years of quiet joy, of watching our legacy grow through children and grandchildren, of knowing we had made a difference. One evening as we walked, Elara stopped suddenly. Her hand pressed to her chest, right above her heart. The same gesture she had used all those years ago when she pulled me back from the curse. "What is it?" I asked, concerned. She smiled, but there were tears in her eyes. "I'm tired, Theron. More tired than healing can fix." I understood. We had been blessed with long lives, longer than most. But everyone's time eventually comes. "How long?" "Not long. Maybe weeks." Her voice was gentle. "Don't look so sad. We've had 45 beautiful years together. That's more than most people get." "It's not enough." My voice broke. "It will never be enough." "Then make what time we have count." So we did. We spent those final weeks doing all the things we loved. Walking in the garden, watching sunsets, telling stories about our children and grandchildren, remembering the life we had built together. Alexander and Lyra visited often, bringing the grandchildren. And when the end came, it was gentle. Elara fell asleep in my arms one evening and simply did not wake. Her last words were, "I love you." Her last expression was peace. I held her until morning, until our children came, until they gently reminded me that I had to let her go. The funeral was attended by thousands, nobles and commoners alike, all coming to pay respects to the queen who had changed everything. They told stories of her kindness, her wisdom, her unwavering commitment to justice. The old woman from the kitchens, now ancient herself, told how Elara had found her sick and exhausted decades ago, had nursed her back to health personally. "She made me feel like I mattered," the woman said through tears, "like I was worth saving. And that changed my life." I understood, because Elara had done the same for me. I lived 4 more years without her. They were not easy years. Every morning I woke expecting to find her beside me. Every evening I turned to share something only to remember she was gone. The bond between us, that connection that had sustained me for 45 years, felt like an open wound. But I was not bitter. How could I be? I had been given a gift most men never receive. I had known true love, true partnership, true connection. And when my time finally came, when I felt my body giving out and the darkness closing in, I was not afraid, because I knew where I was going. The curse had been quiet for decades, but in those final moments, I felt it stir one last time, not with hunger or violence, but with something like contentment. It had been part of me for so long, this burden I had carried, and now, at the end, it seemed almost grateful. "We did good, didn't we?" I whispered to it, to the wolf that had been my companion in my challenge. We became more than what we were. The wolf did not answer in words, but I felt it settle, accept, and when I closed my eyes for the last time, it went with me into whatever came next. I felt warmth, the bond flaring to life one final time, and I knew with absolute certainty that Elara was waiting for me. They buried me beside her in the rose garden just as I had requested. Simple graves, no elaborate monuments, just our names and the dates we had lived. But beneath those dates, Alexander had added an inscription. 7 words that summed up everything we had been to each other. They found each other in the darkness. The story of the cursed king and his common queen became legend. Parents told it to their children. Teachers used it in lessons about honor and love and the power of choosing compassion over cold logic. Some parts got exaggerated, some details were forgotten, but the core truth remained. That love, real love, the kind that sees someone completely and chooses them anyway, that love can break curses, can transform monsters into men, can change kingdoms, and that even in the darkest winter, hope can bloom like roses in the snow. The roses still grow in that garden, tended now by Alexander's grandchildren, and sometimes, on quiet evenings when the moon is full, people swear they can see two figures walking there, holding hands, together even in death as they had been in life. The cursed king, finally at peace, and the woman who saved him. The end.